Lee, imagine you're at work doing whatever crap they make you do to earn a paycheck, and then some strange-looking musclehead walks in and pulls a gun. Now, you're going to do what you're trained to do and give him the money, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not taking a bullet for the register.
Oh, no, I'm not. I'm not sure I'm taking a bullet for just about anybody. Like, yeah. Unless it's my daughter, I don't think I will.
That's a pretty short list.
Yes.
I see where I rate. I come all the way up here to visit you. I'm not even on your list. That's okay. That's cool. I understand. No,
I'd take a knife, Dan, but not a bullet.
Oh, no. I'll take a bullet, not a knife. I'll switch that around.
I'd catch a grenade for you.
But you would do what you're trained to do. That's what everyone tells you to do. Give him the money. Comply.
Yes.
And you'd expect that guy to take the money and leave. But what if he didn't? What if he tells you to go in the back room, lay on the floor, and you think maybe he's going to leave you there and run off so you don't call the cops? But instead, this mustachioed psycho opens fire and executes you and your coworkers until there's no witnesses left to his strong-arm robbery. Grisly, senseless murder committed for a few $1,000s in a store safe. The thought is enough to send chills up the spine of anyone who's ever worked a cash register. And in the early spring of 1997, it was the terrible reality for thousands of workers, and tragically 7, who lost their lives during a crime spree that rocked Middle Tennessee. Tonight, Lee, on Beyond Terrestrial, we take a deep dive into the country singing wannabe Justin Parks, a.k.a. Paul Dennis Reid Jr., the fast food killer. Roll the tape.
You are listening to the Beyond Terrestrial Podcast, your one-stop shop for the outstanding, the unconventional, and the downright strange. Strap in because the boys are about to take a wild ride. I'm Funk Master B, setting up that tea for the duo of Dumbfoolery. Your hosts, Dan and Lee.
Of course I believe in aliens. I mean, in an infinitely growing universe, why would we be the only living species? Bigfoot, Nessie, all that stuff, it's gotta be real. How are we to say that we're the only ones? It's just ignorant. I think aliens are not only from other planets, but they're time travelers.
Welcome back to the Beyond Terrestrial Podcast. I'm Lee, coming to you from the Haunted Barn Studios, and we're in luck because Mr. Dan is here with me in studio, which almost never happens. Dan,
Yes.
How are you?
I am excellent. I love it. We're kicking off our 3rd season by getting together here in the Haunted Barn. We've got new announcer, new music, our first show, over the moon, our round table, fantastic. But that first show, Lee, and the round table, we were way too excited to take ad breaks.
We took none.
Not
none
a
at
single
all.
one. That is going to be great for our editors. And speaking of editors, Lee, we have a new editing team. The fine folks over at Simple Equations Media in Las Vegas, Nevada. Whether it's film, television, audio, or music, Simple Equations has you covered. Pre-production all the way through post-production. They do the post for us. Thank you, guys. Need a music video? How about sound design on a movie? They've got your back. Simple Equations Media, helping you and schmoes like us take your project from concept to completion. Go to simpleequationsmedia.com for more information.
That's simpleequationsmedia.com. You can also find them on Facebook at Simple Equations or on Instagram at Simple Equations Media, and even on Twitter at Simple Equation _
Yes. Shout out to Mike, who was on our first episode. He's working over there at Simple Equations. He does the editing for these shows now, and he's a good dude. He's one of the founding fathers of BT. and I am honored to be here in the Haunted Barn Studios, the birthplace of this crazy ass show.
Well, the birthplace of season 2. Actually, it birthed in Michael's home studio, actually.
Oh, yeah? There
Yeah.
you go. Well, there we go.
So, yes, season 2 is when the Haunted Barn came to fruition.
Oh, well, see, I don't even know the whole history of the show, and I'm on it.
That's okay.
That's all right. Who cares?
I don't know.
But we do know some history about a certain mustachioed murderer that we are going to be getting into today, Lee.
Every time you say mustachioed, I just imagine like the bad guy in all of those like really old cowboy movies, the pre John Wayne genre, where they were like just tying up ladies and
Like the curly
twirling
mustache.
their curly mustache.
You know what though? We'll put up
Leaving
pictures
him on a train
of
track.
Mr. Paul Reid Jr. He does kind of have a cowboy villain look to him. He could have been like a henchman in a cowboy movie with that mustache. It's kind of a Tom Selleck sort of thing, but oh man, he looks like a creeper. You guys will have to check it out. And when you hear the stories about the stuff that he did, it'll be even creepier.
Yeah. I've seen a little bit of it, and I'm excited to have Dan tell me about it in the way that you can be excited to watch a train crash.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. I mean, and the thing is, his crimes took him all the way up here to Clarksville, Lee.
Yeah.
So it's right in the backyard here. So I guess let's get into it. Let's talk about the fast food killer. Now, early on, every killer is like formed, rightly. Nature versus nurture.
Mm-hmm.
So his early life, Paul Dennis Reid Jr. was born November 12th, 1957, to Josephine Marie, and I'll give you a guess what Paul Jr.'s dad's name was.
Was it Paul Sr.?
You are correct, sir.
Ooh!
Lee's nailing it.
I get the prize.
You're on point today, son.
I even said that in the form of a question.
Yes. Well, his mom, Josephine Marie, also called Joni, left home at about 16. She had a very rough life. Reportedly, she was abused by her mother. She may have been forced into prostitution as a teenager. And she moved around a bit before she met Paul Sr. Paul Sr. was a security guard in Fort Worth, Texas.
Fort Worth. And Lone Star State.
Yes. Everything's bigger in Texas. He was also a drunkard, Lee.
Oh.
Yeah, real classy guy. And he did work as a repo man. Now, we're doing our research from a fantastic book by Judith A. Yates. It's called When Nashville Bled. And it is a fantastic work, but it could have, in my opinion, used a little extra editing. It sometimes is confusing in these details, but it doesn't matter. Paul Reid Sr. worked as a repo man, and his work would often take him away from home. Evidently, he didn't have a car. He'd take the bus to go repo other people's cars and then drive their cars back.
Actually, that's not an awful idea. If you think about it,
well, I mean, if you don't have any friends to drive you out there, then yeah, I guess.
I think it's a great idea. You just do it alone, right? It's like a car theft, but
right. Maybe it was a car theft. Who knows?
Excuse me, officer. I'm not stealing this car. I'm repossessing it.
Yeah, considering Paul Jr.'s rash of crime later on, it wouldn't surprise me if criminal activity was something that he learned from somewhere else. But anyway, I digress. He'd be at home. He'd be away from home for weeks at a time, and not always repossessing cars. Sometimes he'd just go on a bender, So he was a very absent father. But despite not being around very much, him and Joni, his wife, had 3 kids, and Paul Reid Jr. was the youngest. He had 2 older sisters. They're like, the oldest was like 5 years older. The next was like 2 years older.
Okay.
So the only little boy, though, that might have been part of it. Paul Reid Jr., who would become the fast food killer, was also born with a malformed left ear.
Okay.
It just was not quite right. And as he grew, it became clear that he was what they would call back in those days, slow, in air quotes. Today we'd say he was like developmentally delayed. Like he didn't, as an infant, he took longer to talk, took longer to walk, hit all those developmental milestones. And Lee, you've taken a kid to the doctor's office. Like that's something they check up on nowadays.
Yeah. And it's like it's kind of like a gamble too. Like you're there and you're like, okay, all right. Yes, she nailed it. Yes. Right. And then the next time you're like, yes, she nailed it.
You're like, we are ticking off the boxes. Like this kid is growing into a normal person. Success. I know. So that's all we can hope for sometimes. But the thing is, like, he was developmentally disabled. He had this malformed ear. Was his cognitive delay part of a birth defect? Was it part of his home life? No one can say because he was never treated. He was hard of hearing on that side for his entire life, never received any treatment.
That's a great thing to do to your child.
Yeah, except for like a future cosmetic surgery, but that's later on in the story.
Sure, cosmetic surgery in the 60s is great.
Yeah,
or the
right.
70s.
Yeah. This was what, 57? Is that right?
When he was born was in the 50s, right?
57, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So maybe the 70s when he had the cosmetic surgery, maybe?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So, well, anyway, Paul's folks, they got divorced. He was like 3. And things really start to go off the rails, as if it wasn't rough enough. His drunk and absent father got custody of Paul and the middle sister, while the older sister went to live with her mom. I guess the reasoning behind this was that Joni, the mom, didn't have enough money to take care of 3 kids. So they're like, oh, we'll give her 1 kid. And we'll let the other 2 stay with the drunk. Perfect.
I think that's great. Like that's logic.
Yeah, that is that's rough. Well, it was the 60s, so what are you gonna do? So
I'm actually surprised any of them went to the father.
Yeah, I know. It's shocking. That is shocking too. I was like, when I read that, I was like, that's strange. I was like, well, the mom didn't have anything, so she must not have. Anyway, we digress again. Paul's dad was working to support his family and his drinking. So he ditched Paul and his sister with his mom, Paul Jr.'s paternal grandmother, who also happened to be named Josephine Marie. Is that a little weird? The guy's mom's name is Josephine Marie. He marries a gal named Josephine Marie.
It's a little weird.
It's a little weird.
It's a little mommy issue kind of thing.
Yeah, to avoid any confusion, we will call the elder Josephine Marie Grandma. Grandma was a widow. She was in her 70s. She cared for her own mother, bedridden Paul's great-grandmother, in the Oak Forest neighborhood of Houston, Texas. She was a simple, hard-working woman by all accounts. She didn't drive, and she devoutly attended Catholic Mass. As Paul grew, it became very clear that Grandma could not control the boy. It started with stealing, little kleptomania. Toys would go missing around the neighborhood, clothes disappearing off of clotheslines, shoplifting. And then it escalated to naughty pranks. And not like fun naughty pranks that you might have with your significant other, like devious, malicious childhood pranks.
You say not naughty pranks. Like, what kind of naughty pranks? Like pranks? Like naughty antics, but naughty
Wait, you're talking about like a naughty prank you might play on your significant other?
I was thinking with your significant other. Like, what would be a prank? Like, skinny dipping in your neighbor's pool? That'd be a naughty prank.
Dick in a box?
That's a naughty prank you play on your significant other.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
All right. Okay.
You caught me, Lee. I was talking out my ass. Anyways, so, yeah, these pranks, and we use the term prank very loosely because this was really crazy stuff. Paul locked his grandma in her room, like put the chair up like you see in the movies.
Oh, wow. So we're like, we kidnapped the babysitter.
Right. Yeah, we went from naughty pranks. What we really meant was kidnapping. He would put tacks like in the food, like she was like cooking one day.
Okay, that's attempted murder.
Yeah. Well, and then this one is 100% attempted murder. He tried to light her bed on fire while she slept in it. His own grandmother.
Attempted murder. Like, it's a murder. It's attempted murder.
Yeah. He was 5 years old.
This kid is fucking Stewie Griffin. Like, he's like the...
Yeah, dude. So again, this really goes to this nature versus nurture debate. A kid's 5 years old is trying to murder people. Is that mischievous? Is that a cry for attention from his parents? Like, is it because his dad was a drunk? Was it because he got hit? Was it because of his, birth defects? Like, who the hell knows?
But it is a sign, like, right? And it's something that an attentive parent would hopefully respond to.
Yeah. Well, it gets worse, Lee, because Paul Jr. would go on to tick some more boxes on the list of how to become a serial killer when he beat his grandma's dog to death with a baseball bat.
All right, now you're killing dogs here, Dan.
I know. No one likes it when the dog dies. I understand. It's rough.
And we're going to commercial break right after we've killed a dog with a baseball bat.
You know what?
Right after we've Negan'd a dog.
Let's do one more little tidbit. We can't end on that, dude.
Okay, thank you.
That's too sad. That's too sad. One more tidbit. So yeah, I mean, that's rough. Like, we can't end on the poor dog dying. That is terrible. His grandma tried to discipline Paul Jr. She would tie him to a chair sometimes.
As you do.
Yeah. But mostly he got away. Like, grandma was just too slow to catch him. Like, grandma's...
Sorry, Grandma. Sorry.
She's 70 years old.
No, I know. I'm sorry for laughing at it.
She's got to take care of her own mom. She's a widow. Her drunken son has saddled her with these two kids, gives her no money.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this poor woman had it rough. So I empathize deeply. But grandma, Paul's sisters, the neighborhood kids, classmates, school employees, they all became targets of his violent outbursts. Finally, a priest suggested that Paul attend a Catholic school for wayward boys, and he was shipped off to boarding school at 8 years old.
And guys, on that note, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more Beyond Terrestrial.
Good evening, ma'am.
Hey, y'all.
What can I do you for?
Can I have a glass of Chardonnay?
I'm sorry, darling. We don't serve that here.
Any Merlot?
I'm pretty sure you don't want these feet going nowhere near them grapes.
Alrighty, how about a craft beer?
Oh, yeah. We got plenty of crap beer. Which one you want?
No, not crap beer. Craft beer.
Oh, no, hell no. I'm pretty sure the bar down the street serves that.
Okay, well, what do you serve?
I'm glad you asked. Welcome to the Backwoods Barcast. We serve up moonshine, cheap beer, bottom shelf liquor, and stories even harder to swallow. Join Nick
And Brittany.
and the janitor Steven as we discuss southeastern mysteries and mayhem, including but not limited to UFOs, true crime, the paranormal, and much more. So knock 4 times, grab a stool, let the bar talk commence, and as always, drink more beer.
So I was just telling Lee and the rest of our listeners how a young Paul Reid Jr. was shipped off to boarding school at the age of 8 years old for being what a lot of people might call a devil child, or
I think it's a fair statement. I think it's a fair statement.
Little asshole.
Ooh, that's an even better one.
Yeah, so very, very naughty, very mischievous. A problem child. You remember that movie, Problem Child?
Yes. Oh, as the Catholic priest put it, wayward boy.
Yeah, like this. So Paul Reid Jr. Was the problem child, except like worse.
A little bit, yeah.
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 So he went to this Catholic school for troubled youths, and a few years later, when he was 12, he was in like a mini bike accident. A little motorcycle, something, I don't know. Anyway, it landed him in the hospital. And while he was at the hospital, he was such a problem patient, yelling at nurses, being uncooperative, that they decided to remand him to the custody of the state. They're just like, this kid can't be controlled. So they called Paul's parents to have this go through, and when they called his mom to sign over the paperwork, she actually came to the hospital to come get him.
Oh, okay. You mean the mom that hasn't been present for many years?
Yeah.
Now, that being said, I do have to hand it to the mom. Custody was taken away from her.
Right.
When she was possibly the more stable of the two.
Right. Well, and I don't know what kind of arrangements exactly they had. His early life is very confusing because he was also a liar. So it's hard to pin down sometimes.
Wait, so you're telling me a thief and murderer also lied about things? I can't believe it.
Yeah, big time. So
bullshit.
Yeah. So he was not a good dude. But yeah, can you imagine like a 12-year-old kid in the hospital, so disruptive, so terrible that they're like, this guy has to be taken by CPS. Like, this no good.
We need to remove this person from like everything, right?
Yeah. So this is how terrible this kid was. So like I was saying, Paul Jr. and his mom, they have a very kind of a strange relationship. She divorced his dad at 3, and because of Paul's grandiose lies, it's kind of hard to know what to believe. Was his mom abusive? Did she buy him fancy and expensive gifts? Was he involved in sports and clubs at school, like a real all-American boy doing 4-H and crap? We really can't say for sure. But what we do know is that his mom, Joni, valued hard work. She had remarried after she divorced. She had 2 more daughters, and she ended up working at an upscale restaurant at a Houston hotel.
Ooh, upscale.
Yes, very fancy. Not long after Paul went to live with his mom, a couple things happened. She got Paul a busboy job, and her new husband, split up.
Oh.
Yeah, so it didn't work out with the new guy, but Paul's junior high and high school years were spent avoiding teasing for being in special ed, right? He had a mild speech impediment, but he played sports to help him make friends and temper the abuse that he got from his classmates. This is a classic kid thing to do.
Is it?
Yeah. Like if you're a weird kid but you don't want to get made fun of that much, you like join the football team.
Okay. And you're still a weird kid, but now you're on the football team?
Right, and those guys like can't make fun of you as much.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Classic. I did that when I was in like the 8th grade.
Oh, okay. What team did you join?
The football team.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I joined the wrestling team kind of initially because of that, and then I kind of fell in love with it, so.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
But I wasn't really that weird of a kid. I mean, I was a weird kid.
I mean, says you.
Well, yeah, says me.
I mean, you weren't this weird of a kid.
No, I was not that weird of a kid.
Not a lot of people are this weird of a kid. Thank goodness.
I mean, there was that one time when I attempted to catch my grandmother's bed on fire while she was in it. But,
right, yeah.
Anyway, I digress.
Right. So he, in these early years, he tried to do a lot of stuff, but he actually was pretty good at the restaurant work that his mom got him into. He advanced from a busboy to a dishwasher to being like a bar boy, where he would be like a go-for the chefs, running errands, doing all kinds of stuff, wear a tuxedo, help out with the bar as a bar back, that sort of stuff. He learned culinary arts from some of the top chefs. Again, this is a fancy upscale sort of place, so it's high end, you know. But as he advanced as a cook in the restaurants, he also advanced in his criminal activities, Lee. He's just building.
Wait. You're telling me this is like a classic case of escalation?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. He was building up the whole time. He added such crimes as petty larceny, car theft, and assault to his rap sheet.
Nice.
Yes, very good.
Nice.
So at the tender age of 16, sweet 16, Paul Reid Jr. was kicked out of the house.
So wait, he didn't get a Sweet 16 party, he got a get the fuck out party?
Yeah. Lee, if you were to venture a guess as to why Paul Reid Jr. Got kicked out of his mom's house, what would you think?
You know, I'm assuming he ate the last chocolate bar.
Yeah, probably. And he also attempted to sexually assault his sisters and his own mother.
Oh. Well, that took a turn.
Yeah. So it's not something the family talks about because it's bad. And this guy's a serial killer, and so they don't really want to talk about him.
I don't understand why.
Yeah. So, yeah. But that's the details that they gave, and he got kicked out. So, where do you go? Paul went back to live with his father.
So, the father, he was the drunkard, right?
Indeed.
Okay. Was the grandma still around?
You know what? I don't think the book mentions her anymore, come to think of it.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe he was successful in killing his grandma. I don't know.
Well, yeah, or just, time. She was 70.
Time is usually successful.
Yeah. Undefeated time. So, yeah, Paul went to live back with his dad. He dropped out of school. Later in life, he lied about spending this time with rich women who lavished him with gifts in return for his quote-unquote company. Yes. Even after he was arrested and taken to prison after all of this, he always claimed that his lovers were rich, beautiful women.
Nice. Yes. All my lovers are rich, beautiful women also.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Actually, me too. Yeah. She takes care of me. I'm a stay-at-home dad.
Oh, Sarah.
Yeah.
Sarah. Oh, I'm sorry.
She'll probably never hear this. She's like, you never compliment me. Well, you don't listen to the podcast, so there you go.
Now she's going to listen to the podcast and hear what you're saying, and she's going to be like, yeah. GTFO.
So, yeah, Paul Reid Jr. dropped out of high school, but he eventually went back to a community college and got his GED in 1977. So he was like about 1920. There he eventually met a girl. He got a steady job as a machinist at a oil equipment firm. You know, petroleum wells are a big business down there in Texas, Lee.
You don't say.
Yeah, I've heard.
Okay. I'll take your word for it.
I'm
I
sure
wouldn't have thought so.
Little bit of money in the oil business, from what I've been told. But anyway,
Teach me something today.
Yeah, and so this girl that he met, he eventually popped the question, and in the month of August, the year 1980, year of our Lord 1980, Paul Reid Jr. was married. And according to Paul's sisters, they warned his bride, do not go through with this. Well, she didn't listen. So,
wow.
Yeah. And surprise, surprise, Paul was a controlling narcissist who didn't give two shits about his new bride.
Go figure.
Yeah. He would even go so far as to lock her in the house when he left.
Nice.
Yeah, which is the sort of thing that loving husbands do all the time. Trust me.
I want to protect her from getting out and like accidentally doing something that might hurt herself.
Right.
Like drive and grocery shop and be their own person.
These women, they need a firm hand, Lee. This is why my wife doesn't listen to the podcast. So, Paul's wife, who's never mentioned by name, she endured 4 years of marriage to Mr. Paul Reid Jr. until he was sent up the river.
Up the river?
Yeah, that's a euphemism for prison, the big house, the hooskow.
Oh, I thought it was like a 20s gangster term for murdered.
No, no.
Murderated.
Too bad he wasn't murdered
Killerated.
because he went on to kill a bunch of people.
Oh, yes.
So, during his married years, from 1980 to 1984, Paul committed a string of robberies on his own and with a partner, a one Mr. Stuart Cook.
Can't trust those cooks.
Yes, he was a friend of Paul's from back in their junior high days. So, yeah, good buddies knock over hardware stores together. Lee,
We did today.
you haven't taken me on a single robbery the whole time I've been here. I came to see you. We haven't done one strong arm robbery.
We've been waiting for the right time.
Okay, yes. So together or on their own, the two would work their day jobs, and then they'd knock over businesses at night. In 1982, Paul was busted and charged with robbing 4 restaurants and a hardware store, though this was only a portion of the crimes he allegedly committed. So, Paul liked to rob restaurants. He had experience working in one as a kid, and he was familiar with their layouts. He knew where the safe should be, and it was easy for him to deal with the staff members. So,
You know what? When you're holding a gun, I'm sure it's easy to deal with just about anybody.
Yeah,
I mean,
better.
except for the police and other people with guns.
Yeah. Well, in these 5 robberies that he was charged with, he didn't kill anyone. And the managers who cooperated and handed over the money in all of these cases lived and were subsequently able to identify Paul Reid Jr. in court.
Oh.
Yes. At the end of his court case, April 16th, 1984, the man who would become the fast food killer was sentenced to 20 years in Texas State Prison. Including time served, Paul served only 7 years of that 20-year sentence.
This feels like a classic failure of the justice system.
This is a failure of lots and lots of systems, as we will see. as the story progresses.
Most notably, his conscience.
Yeah, oh yeah, like human decency. Yeah, definitely. This guy was a big ol' asshole. So during his time in prison, Paul wrote paranoid letters to lawyers, newspapers, and the governor of Texas. He said he was being watched by the government. He was the victim of a mind control plot. Paul also worked out. An admirer of fitness guru Jack LaLanne as a boy. When he grew up, Paul would get a gym membership wherever he lived. So,
Okay.
this is a great combination. Weightlifting and believing people are trying to control your brain. Never any problems when you put those two things together.
Let's give him a gun.
Yes, Paul also offered his fellow inmates some sage advice on the art of the strong arm robbery. Cut your hair. Dress nice. The clean-cut look will keep people from suspecting that you are a criminal. They will not be on guard when you pull a gun and rob them.
Okay.
And he advised his inmate compatriots, don't leave any witnesses. That was the mistake that landed him in prison, and one he did not intend to repeat.
And on that note, I think it's time for us to take a quick break. After that break, we will be back with some more stories from Beyond Psychopaths.
Are you a fan of movies?
Or comics?
Or video games?
Or just anything else nerdy?
Well, you should check out the Zing This Podcast. And that's spelled
Zeng.
this. And we have nerdy topics from comic book reviews to in-depth analysis of iconic nerdy movies, as well as video game discussions.
Mm-hmm.
Where's some of the best places to find us, Allie?
Well, Podbean, of course.
You can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play,
Anywhere else you listen to your podcast. Yeah.
So check us out. Once again, that is
Zing This.
All right, we are back, Lee. And I was just telling you all about Paul Reid Jr.'s stint in prison. Good news, he was released on parole in 1990. And he got work as a truck driver in the Fort Worth area. And he promptly got into a car accident.
Great.
Yes. Sadly, he didn't die.
Damn it.
Since it was determined the other driver was at fault.
Was it Paul?
Well, Paul fault. Paul. Yeah. Mr. Reid Jr. received workman's compensation and a $25,000 settlement check. He used this cash on...
Did he get that messed up ear fixed?
You know, you would think. He used that cash on plastic surgery. Little rhinoplasty, have his ears pinned back.
Oh, he had all sorts of things happen.
Oh, yes. He had like some kind of like acid wash, like peel thing to fix acne scarring. Yeah.
This dude's like, I'm going to change my appearance so I can be a better robber.
Yes. He was a narcissist, so he was very vain. And he had the great idea he should become a country music superstar.
You heard it here. Country music superstars.
Right. Well, evidently this plastic surgery was not very good. Because a lot of people later on would say he looked kind of strange, like not quite right.
Could it have been that he was like literally just crazy and they just like they could feel the aura?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it for sure. But I mean, $25,000 Texas plastic surgery, maybe a little botched.
Maybe a little Mexico.
Yes. He worked after this. He worked some odd jobs. He bounced around from Fort Worth to Chicago to Nashville, back to Fort Worth to Oklahoma City. And in this time, his paranoid delusions returned. Yes.
Paranoia, narcissism, super fit. All right. I like where we're going here.
Yes.
We're making a
dog murder. I mean,
Yeah.
come on.
we're making a
Yeah, we've got all the ingredients for a serial killer soup right here.
and as we turn the
Yeah. Nasty. And
stir the pot.
a nice
Dan.
little flavor of wanting to be a country music superstar, which is a nice little twist on that recipe. So, like any good aspiring country singer would, in 1995, he moved to Music City, Nashville, Tennessee. He did what a lot of aspiring singers do, Lee. He got a job at a restaurant.
That's what he knows.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he does have the work experience. And let's be honest, how many dishwashers in the city of Nashville play a guitar? How many waiters in that town sing?
I would prefer not to answer that question for fear of upsetting some of our listeners.
I believe the percentage is probably very high. But you know, that's Music City for you. That's where dreams go to be crushed or made.
Yes.
So
that and LA, like those are your two chances.
Right. Visit Nashville. A lot more fun, because then you don't have that pressure of trying to become a country music superstar. You just go to Broadway, go to some honky tonks, drink beer, party. Way better. Nash Vegas, that's where it's at.
Hell yeah,
dude.
Hell yeah.
So, because he had spent so much time lifting, right? He was working at a Shoney's, Lee. Shoney's. I've never been to Shoney's.
It's kind of like a Denny's.
This is what I figured. Yeah, I've never been though. So because he had spent so much time lifting in prison, Lee, he was known around the Shoney's for being the guy to like pick up stuff. Like you get some heavy boxes in or whatever. Like you need help putting shit away. Like they're like, go get Paul, that dummy. He'll just fucking lift it right over his head. That's true. He was like the big guy to lift stuff. That was his thing. Interviews with like his former coworkers, they're always like, "Oh, he was always so nice, you know. He'd pick up heavy stuff." that was his thing.
That was all of it too. Like he was just so nice. Like I'd be trying to lift something heavy, I couldn't lift it, so they'd come and pick it up, and it was great.
Well, beyond cooking and picking up things, he tried to accomplish his goal of being a country music superstar. He would go down to the Opryland amusement park, which is now a mall, I guess. And he would busk. He'd be out there playing. He'd hand out 8x10 photos of himself, and he'd sign them all with his country music pseudonym, Lee. If you were gonna name this guy country music superstar, Paul Reid Jr., what do you think?
Justin Lawrence McMurderer.
You know what? You're actually doing pretty good. He called himself Justin Parks.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that was his country music name. I've scoured the internet trying to find any demos of his music, and I can't find any. But according to people who have heard, Paul was tone deaf. He already had a bad ear, so it's not surprising.
Yeah.
So, but the pictures of him as a country star with his like white hat and mustache are like peak 90s. Very good.
Oh, like straight up Garth Brooks, but with a mustache?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
When he wasn't working or playing, Paul actually made some friends. He stayed in an apartment building, knew the people, knew his neighbors. He was known for being kind of a bit of a goofball, like a big kid. Like he had like stuffed animal in his car and some weird shit like that. And he started taking remedial courses to improve himself at the local community college. But being a liar, he told people that he was a law student. Yeah, so he was taking like basic writing.
Dan, I'm a law student. How do you spell 7?
I'm seriously like reading comprehension courses, and he's like, well, guys, you can't mess around with me. I'm pre-law.
What's 7 plus 3?
Yeah, dude, absolutely insane. This guy. But that, that's the life of a liar, of a narcissist, of a sociopath. He's so built up in his own head that's the thing.
I don't have much for this. Like, I'm just watching this train wreck happen.
Yeah,
right now.
I didn't put this in the notes, but I'm going to tell it right here just to illustrate this point about how built up he is in his own head. Later on, he wore a Burger King crown to his own father's funeral. And he insisted that his relatives call him King Paul.
Commit him.
Yeah.
Commit him.
Psycho. So, there you go. That's just a little add-on from the book. So, anyways, as a convicted felon, he was not allowed to purchase guns. Lee, you know that. That's a thing that you can't do.
I do know that. Not from experience, but I know that. Like, I just want to clarify that because you said, Lee, you know that.
You know that, Lee. You're a convicted felon.
I'm not a convicted felon. Convicted.
Well, while he was acquiring friends, he also kind of convinced some of them to sell him guns. Or buy him guns at pawn shops through a straw man sale.
Look at that.
Yeah, because that's not... But our laws, Lee, our gun laws, they're so strict. Just saying. I love guns. I think you should own a gun if you're responsible. A man has a right to defend his home. But an asshole like this should never have a gun.
I agree with that. And I feel like a lot of it... I agree with you on that. But I do not want to offend all of our listeners. So I feel like we should stop talking about gun control.
No, I'm all for gun control if you mean using 2 hands to kill assholes like this. but
just to clarify, he's smart enough to not use 2 pistols. It would be a rifle.
Right. Like I said, this guy was just a big old jerk. And yeah, he skirted the law. So what are you going to do? But Lee, guns cost money. Gym memberships cost money. College courses cost money. Trying to be a country music singer and paying the rent in Music City costs money. And working at a Shoney's is not like super lucrative.
Are you sure? I've been to Shoney's. They look like they're rolling in it.
It's real fancy, huh?
It's real fancy. That's where you have to put on shoes and real pants.
God dang, son. That is so Tennessean. But yeah, so it was getting tight. Things were getting tight for Paul Reid Jr. And he suggested to some of his co-workers that he knew an easy way to make quick cash. Yeah.
I feel like anytime somebody tells you that, you should just turn away and walk away.
Well, they did. They laughed at him. They laughed at the suggestion of robbing restaurants with Paul.
Wait, whoa. No, if somebody comes to you and says, I know an easy way you can make some quick cash, you turn and walk away. If somebody comes to you and says, let's rob a restaurant together. You call the cops.
Well, it was like, they're working in the back. They're like, man, this sucks. You know what we could do? You know how much money this place makes on a Saturday? We should just fucking take it. Like, yeah.
It's like,
oh, yeah,
it's like
we should,
2
Paul.
months of rent. Like,
Yeah.
what?
I know. While other employees laughed off the idea of robbing their own restaurant or other restaurants, Paul Reid Jr. was not laughing. He was very serious. And on February 16th, 1997, he put his plan into action. It was at a Captain D's restaurant.
You ever been to
Nashville.
Captain D's?
I haven't, just because I'm not really into fast food, seafood places, but
It's okay. It's one of those. Yeah, it's okay.
yeah, I would, but I just if I was looking for some fried shrimp baskets or something like that,
you run the risk like you do with any other fast food fish of, getting real sick, but
yeah, we've got a couple down in Mississippi. We got a Penn's. We've been to those ones before. We like Penn's, but
I've never been to Penn's.
yeah, I don't know how big the chain is. But anyways, we got Captain D's down there, so we'll try one out eventually, I'm sure. This Captain D's hadn't opened yet. It was early in the morning, and the only two people there was the store manager, Steve Hampton, and Sarah Jackson, 16-year-old employee and friend of Steve's. Steve Hampton sounds like the kind of guy that people want to work for. He was very friendly. He had been working fast food since a young age. He was moving up. He had a real future in the company. So, good for him. And, little side note, Captain D's also owned by Shoney's. At the time, it was.
Huh.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
There you go. This Captain D's was on Old Lebanon Road in Donelson, which is just east of downtown Nashville. And it was Donelson's home to tourist destinations. The Grand Ole Opry is in Donelson. So it's a pretty well-trafficked, nicer part of the city.
Yeah.
So just before 9 a.m., Paul Reid Jr. came knocking. It was a Sunday. The restaurant was not open yet. And we don't know what exactly he said, but what we do know is that Paul Reid Jr. had actually visited Captain D's the night before. See, what happened was the night before, just after closing, Paul also came knocking on the door of Captain D's. There were 4 young male employees inside closing. And I don't know if it was the numbers that scared him off. Maybe he was just casing the place, trying to get a feel for it. He asked them for a job application and when the best time to return it would be. So that was it. So he came back with the job application, probably used it to get inside. And that's when he pulled a gun on Steve Hampton. Forced him into the back to open up the safe, empty out the registers, all that kind of stuff. He even took Steve's wallet. Steve had the rent money in his wallet or something like that, so he took Steve's wallet as well. He made Steve and Sarah go into the back. Sarah was just prepping coleslaw for the day, working, and all of a sudden, boom, strong arm robbery. He made them go into the walk-in cooler and lie down on the floor on their stomachs. He shot Steve Hampton twice in the back of the head and once in the back. He shot Sarah Jackson 5 times. He used a .32 caliber revolver. The evidence suggests that Sarah was shot 3 times like Steve, twice in the head and once in the back. But the first 2 headshots were considered superficial by the medical examiner. That means at some point this asshole, Paul Reid Jr., reloaded his gun to keep shooting a 16-year-old girl. Yeah, that's a dick move.
Fuck him.
Yeah, giant asshole. So,
first of all, just be accurate your first time.
Right, yeah, but, the people are laying down, he's standing above them. This is 100% execution style. Mm-hmm. You can imagine at a shallow enough angle, he might not.
It might have grazed her.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, that seems like that's what happened. And she tried to get up. I mean, that's what the evidence suggests. She tried to crawl away, and he came back and finished the job. So, yeah, asshole, dick move. Some other sad facts. Sarah didn't normally work Sundays. She had asked her mom for permission to be at work that day to earn extra money. So imagine how her poor mom felt after that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that's something people deal with when these tragedies happen. If it had been any normal day, no one would have felt bad about it. Oh, she went to work on Sunday. She made a little extra money. She's 16. She's going out on her own. Good for her.
Uh-huh.
Not that day.
Nope. All changed in an instant.
Yeah. And like I was saying, Steve Hampton, 25 years old. He left behind a wife and 3 kids. The youngest had just turned 3.
Wow.
Sarah Jackson had been over at the Hamptons' house for this kid's 3rd birthday. And then they went into work together the next day.
Wow.
Yeah. So, according to Steve's wife, this is going to be rough, guys. This is rough, these murders. According to Steve's wife, she does not remember how she told her children this terrible news. She never wants to remember the faces that they made, ever. So she's blocked it out.
I can understand why.
Yeah. So that's the sort of thing that happens when these terrible things, when people experience these losses. So, anyways, that's the sad truth. Where were we at? Let's see. Oh, I scrolled down too far in my notes. Sorry. So another employee was coming on for the shift. Sarah and Steve were there doing the prep. Another employee was going to come to help them open the store and start running for the day. But he found the doors locked. He went to nearby restaurants and tried to call them on the phone. This is the days before everyone had a phone in their pocket, 1997. So he had to go around trying to make phone calls, and no one would answer. It became clear that something was wrong. Other Captain D's employees were notified. One of the workers who had been there the night before, his dad is actually a Nashville cop. So he called up his father, sent him over there to check on the place, right? An assistant manager arrived with keys. This was a little bit before noon. So this store was supposed to open up over an hour ago. Uh-huh. But no one's been able to get anyone on the phone.
And that assistant manager, a little bit before noon, so you want to guess that assistant manager may have just been coming in for his shift for the day.
No, so they had to call him up. They called up all these employees. They're like, something's wrong. No one's answering the phone. The store's supposed to be open. No one's here. Mm-hmm. So he comes down with the keys, right?
Okay.
And who knows how far he had to come from, but whatever. Nashville officer Jeff Wells, whose son worked at Captain D's, found 2 of his son's co-workers, his son's manager, dead in the cooler. The VHS security tape, nowhere to be found. Safe open, registers open. A few people who had driven by the restaurant that morning claimed to see a tall man with dark hair acting suspiciously around the Captain D's. One said that he thought the man had long hair, and another said he was wearing a Shoney's apron. Paul Reid Jr. worked at Shoney's.
Did Paul Reid Jr. have long hair? No, he shaved his head, didn't he?
He had short hair, so he was misidentified by one of the witnesses.
Okay.
So...
Could he have had a wig?
Maybe.
Was his mustache fake, too?
No, his mustache looks very fake, but it is also very real. So, Paul Reid Jr. has just committed his first grisly murder. But it seems like we might have some leads on his whereabouts. What's going to happen? Will he be caught? Will he continue? If you already know the story, well, you know there's some continuing that's about to go on.
I'm willing to bet, like, coming from the outside, it's really hard to say somebody gets named the fast food killer without having more than one killing.
Only knocking over one story. Yeah, so yeah, there is more to this story, and we will dive deeper into Paul Reid Jr., a.k.a. the fast food killer, a.k.a. Justin Parks, on the next episode of Beyond Terrestrial. Folks, stay safe and keep looking for more strange stories from out there beyond terrestrial.
Thank you for listening to Beyond Terrestrial, all three of y'all. If you're still a fan of this show, follow Beyond Terrestrial on social media and join the Beyonders Facebook group for even more strangeness. Links to everything, including previous episodes, are available at beyondterrestrial.com. That's the place to go for stickers, merch, show swag, and our Patreon. Patrons get exclusive access to ad-free shows, giveaways, and the unedited after-show show. Anything you give to the show goes straight to Funk Master B's bachelor pad, which for now is also where these jive turkeys record this show. This show was edited by Simple Equations Media with music by Mike Root. Dan and Lee will be back next Tuesday with more from Beyond Terrestrial.